What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for tuning in. So this is a part 2 of my last video series that I'm going through. For any of you guys that haven't seen the first video, I'll link it in the description below or up here somewhere. But for those of you that have seen it, we have, as you saw in the last video, we have all of the pipes nice and painted up, and to be completely honest, they turned out way better than I expected. Paint laid down pretty nicely. By no means is it a professional paint job, but as far as my own rattle can paint jobs go, I think this might be my best one yet. So I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said in the last video, since I have the whole truck torn apart, I'm going to be replacing the high pressure oil lines with the CNC Fabrication high pressure oil lines. They're the same ones that made my fuel system on my truck, the one I installed. I'm not going to go too crazy into detail with it, but I'll take you guys along, give you guys a pretty good idea of what all it should involve. So yeah, I'll show you the lines again in case you haven't seen them, and then I'll show you what it looks like up inside the truck, and we're going to get going on the install. I kind of mentioned this in my last video, but I'll kind of briefly go over it again. I'm installing these because the truck has 120,000 miles on it, which means that these lines could go for another 80,000 miles, or they could go out in the next weekend. It's kind of in that unknown gray area, and I'm building this truck for reliability, so I might as well, while I have it all torn apart and I have all the intercooling and the spider and everything taken out of it, I want to go in and replace these oil lines at the same time. I had them sitting on the shelf, so I figured I'd do it now. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CNC Fab, they're a really good company from all my experiences with them. They create high quality products and they have pretty good service. I haven't had any issues with them so far. So these are the stainless steel lines, nice braided steel, just a nice upgrade over factory, and they should look nice in the engine bay as well as hold up really well. So while I got the engine all torn apart, or the top of the engine all torn apart, I want to go in and put these in. So I'll kind of show you inside the truck a little bit, but just a quick overview. It is basically two fittings on the driver's side of the high pressure oil pump that go to the middle of the high pressure oil rail on the middle of the heads. Pretty easy to see. You'll see it as I kind of pointed out. Alright, so we're here under the hood. As you guys can see, I already have everything undone for the project I was currently working on, and because I had it all undone, I decided to dig a little deeper and replace these lines, kind of like I said. So I'm not going to show taking it all apart, but it's not all that complicated. You got the intake spider going into the engine there, and then your intake and your intercooler piping going down on each side. So with these lines, they're going to look a lot like this bright silver line that you see there. That is another line from CNC Fabrication, and then the lines we're going to be replacing are this high pressure oil line and that one right down there. That is kind of hard to see, but you guys can get to it, and then they just go down to the pump right there. There it is. It goes down to the high pressure oil pump there. Nothing too complicated. Obviously it makes my life a lot easier now that I have that fuel bowl out of the way. For those of you that don't know, I did do a fuel bowl delete and built this entire fuel system. That's what all these stainless steel lines are going around underneath all the wiring. But it's nothing too complicated. We'll show you guys as we kind of go along, taking off the fuel line or the oil lines down off the pump and then off the heads, and then we'll be replacing them. Alright, so looking down in the engine of the truck, hopefully you guys can hear me. People doing yard work right now. But got the high pressure oil pump down here, and right down here on the back of the pump there's a drain plug that you can take out. I can't remember what size it is. I think it's a 16 or 17 millimeter. And you take it out right there, and that allows you to drain the reservoir of the high pressure oil pump, make the job a little bit cleaner. So now we're going to be working on that high pressure oil line right here, taking it off. It does just have a quick disconnect fitting on it that you can get a special tool from Riff Raff or make your own. It's basically just a little fork that you use to slide in to separate it. But there's a plastic piece and then the metal of the line, and you're just going to shimmy this in there. It's a lot like an air compressor quick disconnect fitting that once you separate it, the line will just pop right on out. Got the tool in there. Should be separated enough to now pull the line out if it's not too stuck in there. There we go. We got the fittings out of the truck. Inside the actual fittings that go into the high pressure oil pump, there are these sort of check valve springs that you'll be taking out for the CNC Fab lines. You won't need these anymore, but if you're just going back to factory, make sure you don't lose these and that you put them back in the right orientation where the little metal plate is actually going into the pump itself. So now a little bit better of a look at the actual fittings themselves. It is, like I said, a lot like a air compressor fitting, where this is what's sticking out of the engine, and you just push it into place and it'll snap in. It'll snap into place just like that. I don't think this one's all the way seated, but basically when you're using the tool to take it out, you're just sliding it in this little gap and opening it up, and that releases the lock ring inside that allows you to take it out. So it's not too complicated. These will stay on the engine, and then you just release these lines from it when you're staying with the factory setup. There's an O-ring here that ends up leaking eventually, and then there's O-rings inside of it that help it seal that can end up leaking eventually. And so that's why I'm ending up going with the CNC Fab lines that get away from all of this, and it's actually a screw-on fitting like a hydraulic fitting would be. Alright, so I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of an update down in the valley of the engine before we really start buttoning it back up and putting all the piping on. We got the oil lines in, which you can see down there. Nice shiny fittings down there, and then I ended up putting the loom back over the top of them just because they're around a lot of these other lines, and they will be rubbing some at some point, so put them back on. The driver's side is the one that you see down here that wraps up and goes to that silver fitting over there, or that stainless steel fitting. And then the passenger side goes back to that right there and wraps back down to the pump. So that's basically it. Nothing too crazy. It takes a little bit of time to get everything lined up and get the fittings in, but it's not all that hard. It just takes a little time. So now we are going to be putting it all back together and hopefully firing her up. So we're going to do the intake spider, then the intercooler piping, and she should be good to go. Don't forget, if you did drain your high pressure oil pump, to put the plug back in right down there. You won't be starting without a plug in, and you'll have a nice mess. Alright, enough rambling. I'm going to get back to work and put it all back together. guys, here we go. She is all buttoned up and back together, test driven, running great, and looking a heck of a lot better and nicer than she was. I am pretty darn happy with how well it all turned out. I know I said it before when they were laying in the garage that they actually turned out a whole lot better than I thought they would, and now that they're in the truck, that hasn't changed. I think it looks great. If I were to do it all over again, probably try to find a little bit of a darker blue, but in the whole scheme of things, I'm pretty darn happy with how they turned out, and we only had some very minor scuffs and scratches when it comes to installing them, so that's a win as well. By no means is this like a nice high gloss cool powder coat finish, but I do think it does touch up the engine quite nicely. Just gives it a little bit extra pop and makes it look a little bit cleaner inside the engine bay, which I like. Yeah, I don't know how much more there is to say about it. All the oil lines seem to be doing great. Doesn't appear to be any leaking. As you saw, I put the shields back on them to help kind of protect rubbing, so they're not all sticking out nice and fancy like, but they seem to be doing really well. On the startup, you guys probably noticed it did start up a little rough, and that is just because there was air in the system that has to work its way out. Nothing crazy. I expected it, didn't catch me off guard. Just working a little bit of air out of the high pressure oil system, and that's why it started up a little rough. Down the road, I think I would like to do some more black accents throughout this, as well as some more blue, maybe a custom intake piping, and then just give it some black accents throughout. Get rid of this ugly yellow degas bottle at some point and put a nice aluminum one in there. But yeah, there she is. Alright, well with that, I think I'm going to wrap up this video. I know I keep saying this, but I'm pleasantly surprised at how well the paint job turned out. I think you guys all know that rattle can paint jobs usually don't turn out as good as we have it envisioned in our minds, and this thing probably turned out better than I expected. So I'm super happy with that. And in terms of the high pressure oil lines, they went in great, no real problems. So huge shout out to CNC Fabrications for building quality products. I'm not sponsored by them, but I've used a number of their products at this point, and the quality is really nice. It's hard to beat a good American-made quality product. So for the 7.3 Powerstroke community, if you haven't checked out CNC Fab, go check them out. They're a nice company, and they have a lot of different products for the 7.3 Powerstrokes. This is where we're going to call it for the video. As always, if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below. All of your guys' interaction helps the channel grow. The channel's growing great thanks to you guys. So huge shout out to all my current subscribers. Thank you for following along. I greatly appreciate it. It's awesome. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to subscribe. We got a lot of stuff done to this truck already, and a lot of stuff to come. We're kind of getting into the big fun stuff of the build now. So subscribe, don't miss out, follow along. Well, I'm going to quit rambling. I'll let you guys go. If you made it this far in the video, thank you very much. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. I'll catch you guys on the next video.